Okay, so this whole video idea started because I really wanted to control feedback in a very specific way. I wanted to have like a plugin that sets the delay time for a feedback, and then every time the delay repeats, it goes through a set of effects that I determine, so that you get, like, for example, a pitch shift delay that goes up each time the delay repeats, or with a frequency shifter that just shifts all the frequencies up every time the delay repeats. So I found a few ways to do this. In FL Studio it was a bit difficult, but maybe in other DAWs it'll be simpler. So let's demonstrate. I have a very basic pluck sine wave. And the simplest way is to use plugins that already allow feedback. So a good example would be Effect Track. It's a rack plugin from Sound Toys that basically wraps up a bunch of their effects, and it has a recycle function. So this recycle button, what it does, knob, is that it outputs the output right back into the input all over again. So this means that if I have like a basic effect chain here, like some chorus and a bit of distortion, once I increase the recycle, it's going to feed back into itself. So let me demonstrate. So as you heard, it sounded really bad, really fast. And that's because what's happening is that the output stream is constantly fed back into the input. So this means that there's a continuous stream that's constantly being chorused and distorted and outputted back into the input. So this causes the volume to go really fast into a really weird territory. And what you're hearing, I assume, is like hundreds of chorused inputs and distorted inputs at once. So the way that I found was easiest to control this thing is to use a 100% wet delay. So what this does is it basically means that every time the output is fed back into the input, it's going to wait the entire time of the delay to sample that time frame and only then enter the effect chain again. So this creates a much more spaced out feedback that doesn't go super crazy, super fast. So without any feedback, without any recycle, it would sound like this. Just a regular delay with the chorus and the distortion. And once I start increasing that, you see I get multiple repetitions, even though my feedback is at 0. If I increase it more, as you can hear, it can still get crazy, but it takes significantly longer amounts of time just to get this loud. And in Effect Track, I found that using Devilock with a bit of crush is sort of acting like a limiter so that it doesn't go too crazy. So that's nice, but plugins like this limit you with the effects that you can put into them. I can only put the effects that Sound Toys have into this plugin. So let's take a look at the second option that I thought about. I called it Feedback Master. It's a crazy patcher patch, which does pretty much what I just described. So it works with 8 different patcher containers that each one contains a delay container and an effects container. So basically how this works is that you have the delay, it's at 100% mix. And what happens is that you can tell this patcher how many steps you want the delay to have. So one step would mean that only this patcher would work. Let's demonstrate. Let's increase the delay time. Yeah, okay. And once you start increasing the steps, you get the output of the first patcher into the input of the second patcher, and so on and so forth until the 8th patcher. They are all exactly the same. So let's demonstrate that. So what happens is that in each one of these, I put an effects patcher that has a bit of saturation and a bit of chorus. So each repetition of that delay is going to be louder and also more distorted and chorused. So you get some weird sounds like this. Now, this is an extremely complicated way of doing this, but it allows you a very granular control, because what's happening is that you can set the delay time for each of the containers here. So let's take a look at the delay. You can tell it to be really fast or really long. You can also sync it if that's what you want. And you can also increase, at least in kilohertz delay and in most delays, the feedback of the internal delay. So you also get like each repetition repeating itself in the next repetition, which gives you very crazy sounds. So the downside to doing all of this is that if you want to change the effects, you need to go into the first patcher, go into the effects patcher inside it. I don't know, set any effect that you want. Let's, I don't know, add a flanger, for example. And then you need to save this patcher as a preset, and then go to each one of these and load the preset that you saved. So this can take, I don't know, a minute to do this switch every time. But it allows you very granular control, because it not only you are controlling the feedback, you also can control the amount of repeats. So I don't want any more than 6 repeats. That's all I'm going to get. Which is a very nice way to actually control how much feedback you want. At the end of this chain, there's a gain plugin that just reduces the gain because it's very loud very often. There's an EQ that removes some of the lows and the very highs, because if you, for example, pitch shift or heavily distort your signal, you're going to get a lot of frequencies that aren't necessarily in the hearing range. So that's why it's there. And at the end, a limiter to make sure that it doesn't go above 0 dB and cause some crazy volume. So this is another way. It's very labor intensive, but it's a possibility. Now, I've seen a few like Ableton Live videos that do feedback, and they have it very simple. Like they just route one channel to another channel, and then route that channel to another channel, and that channel they route back into the first channel, into the second channel. So it creates just a loop. But that's not possible in FL Studio. You can't route into a track, the output of a track to an input of a track that came into it. So instead, I've made a Loopback Master version of my patcher. So this requires you to enable loopback in your sound card or sound driver. In this case, it's virtual one by default. I'm going to disable everything that I have. What this does is it just feeds back everything that is played on the entire computer into this channel. So let me demonstrate. So as you saw, it got really crazy really fast, because as with other basic feedback, it just continuously streams the output into the input. So it gets really loud really fast. So what the Loopback Master does is it's a much simplified version of that same patcher that I just showed you. And what it does is it has the same delay patcher in it with all of the same controls. You can control the feedback, the time, and then you have the effects patcher. This could be anything you want. You can put into here 100 effects, it doesn't matter. And the same low high cuts and limiter at the end. So how this works is that basically you're defining how much gain you want at the start of the chain. And this is going to determine how many repeats or how much feedback is going to happen. So let me demonstrate. I'm going to start with like almost no gain. And I'm going to slightly increase it. So what's happening here is that this gain is applied over and over again to the continuous stream of feedback that's happening. And the louder it gets, you can get results like you had before. Which are very loud, but thanks to the delay patcher that is set to 100% mix, we can buffer out these repeats over time so that it doesn't happen immediately. It takes quite a lot of time to build up. If I reduce the delay time, it's going to get crazier much faster. So let me demonstrate. Yeah, that's a good way to demonstrate that. So in this case, I have a frequency shifter in my effects container, and this just pitches up on every repeat. So you get this sort of sound. And you can also increase what I call inner feedback. So inner feedback is the feedback of the delay itself. So if you increase that, it means that like every repetition is going to also be on the next repetition. So let's demonstrate how it sounds without that. And with it. You can hear it's much more clustered together. That's because the previous note is going to be played with the next note over and over again. Other than that, the controls are pretty much the same. You have the delay sync function if you want it to be musical to the tempo of your project. And there's the on-off button. So what this does is it basically kills any feedback that happens. So let's say I have a very intense amount of feedback that is way too loud and it doesn't stop. On and off, it just kills it immediately. And the way to do that is in two ways. So on and off needs to do two things to practically kill any repeating feedback. So it needs to set the gain into the delay to 0%, which means no more input is going to be delayed and then fed back to the output. So this kills any future feedback. But it also needs to remove any feedback if existing on the delay itself. So let's say I have some inner feedback here, and I sort of kill the gain into the delay by setting this to 0, like so. So let's demonstrate. As you can hear, it was still playing even though I killed the gain. That's because the feedback on the internal delay kept playing the notes. So the on and off button does two things at the same time. It kills the gain into the delay, so no more output is being sent, but it also stops the feedback from being at whatever value it was. For the FL Studio people that are watching, I did this with two formula controller. So you have one that is a simple if. It says if A is above 0, then you can set the gain to 0.5, which is the default, 100%, like so. Else you set it to 0, so you cut off the gain. And the second inner feedback formula controller basically is another if. It says if A is equal to 0, then output 0 to the feedback no matter what. And if A isn't 0, then output whatever B is. And B is the inner feedback knob. So that way I can control whatever's happening inside the delay container. And this is done, you just go into here, inputs, parameters, you enable whatever you want to control, like the feedback in this case, and then you can link the output of the formula controller into whatever you want to control here. So yeah, that is pretty much it. All three methods have their advantages and disadvantages. Like for example, the virtual in method, the loopback method, is a problem because no matter what I play, it's going to be sent into it. Like if I play this snare, which isn't routed anywhere near this thing, it's going to be played no matter what, and your entire project will play, and your Windows notifications will play, and everything will. So there is a drawback, but if you're using this to do some weird sound design, then you can absolutely do that, and then just turn off the input. I'll just set it to off, and I think it should be fine. Yeah, that's fine enough. The Feedback Master just takes a lot of time to load everything, but it does give you a much more precise amount of delay lines repeating. So that's nice. And of course, if you have plugins that can actually do this on their own, then that's really nice, and it's very simple, and you don't need to build anything to make that. So I think I'm going to end the video with just me experimenting with some different effects into the Loopback Master, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.